Dystopia warning, obviously. I hope you're settled there in front of your telly screens with a nice glass of victory gin with your customary King Yong Johnson haircut to commemorate our fallen leader. And I hope you're sticking with the plan, that was implemented by the British government that means you've got to weep in front of a portrait of him every day. Every day. It might seem a little bit dramatic that I'm saying this, but in the grand scheme of things, it really isn't. I've got my funeral Adidas on for a reason. Rest in peace, our rights. What I'm about to tell you today is just another nail in the coffin, because from the government that brought you anti-protest laws, strike legislation, and a number of other policies and bills that clamp down on your rights, that are routinely described as Orwellian, but would make Orwell go, what the fuck is going on here? I couldn't have written this. That's how bad it is. It's like, as I've said before, Orwell teamed up with J.G. Ballard, produced a series directed by Charlie Brooker, got Kubrick in, to batter about the actors a bit, and then set it here in this green, grey, depressing, dismal, gloomy, fucked island. Anyway, hold on, because unlike, Cameron and that pig, there's nowhere could lube you up. Check this shit out. Yeah, they've been sneaking in clauses again, haven't they? Much like they did with the, changes they made to the Official Secrets Act in order to make it very difficult for journalists to report truthfully on what the government are doing. They implemented scare tactics that would mean that any article that might embarrass the government could result in journalists, being tried under the Official Secrets Act, yeah. I mean, amongst them, they've got loads of super injunctions. If they don't want the embarrassing articles coming out, maybe they could try, I don't know, not falling out of brothels at 4 a.m. or being a bit more discreet about when they pick up their cocaine, rather than approaching drug deals with all the subtlety of a builder on acid. Anyway, this new clause is extremely troubling, and it'll affect around 22 million people in this country. This clause gives the government the power to inspect or monitor the bank accounts of anyone claiming social security benefits. So if you're in receipt of child benefit, state pension, universal credit, then this is something that affects you. I'd highly recommend reading the article by Prem on this, because it is spot on. It is detailed, and it outlines precisely the different ways in which the government are targeting the most poor in society. Not just the most poor, the disabled, the sick, the old, pregnant women, What it does is it gives government agencies the powers to instruct banks and financial institutions to mass monitor individuals that are receiving welfare payments regardless of whether or not there's any suspicious activity or concerns about fraud. There's no need for a court order. You won't be told that you're being snooped on. And the British government says this is to prevent fraud. Really? They're saying that this could prevent £100 million in benefit fraud per year. Oh, not taking into account then the fact that since 2010, an estimated 450 billion to 1,500 billion in tax has been lost to tax avoidance or evasion. But they're not facing jail, consequences, surveillance, are they? Neither's Michelle Mone, is she, over the MedPro links? No, what she's doing is trying to use her wealth and her power and the law to even silence people reporting on her involvement in this, even though she's actually come out and admitted it now. Admitted links to MedPro, a PPE company that was awarded more than £200 million in government contracts for health supplies during the pandemic, despite most of them being unusable. Got a yacht though, didn't she? Still skiing in the Alps, isn't she? Not been fucking arrested, has she? Sunak has written off billions in pandemic fraud, and the reason he's done that is because it bought his mates houses, yachts and holidays. Are Tory donors facing scrutiny? Are billionaire tax-avoiding newspaper owners facing surveillance? Are politicians being spied on? No, they're not, but they fucking should. As I've said previously, the term Orwellian is thrown around quite a lot nowadays, but when you look at the actual facets and the components of what made up that book, you'll realise that there's actually really alarming parallels. One of the key components of it was constant surveillance, undermining people's rights and autonomy through fear, propaganda, etc. Well, there's no better example spreading fear and propaganda, is there, than blaming the poorest and the most vulnerable people in society, along with, asylum seekers and immigrants, for everything that's going wrong, not taking into account that they're literally responding to crises and failings perpetrated by the actual government itself. There's a great saying, which is, the fool looks at the finger that points at the sky. And there's a lot of fools in our society looking at that finger that's pointing at the sky. Because the government are responsible for creating conditions where working people, vast proportions, like about 40% of working people, have to rely on universal credit to top up their piss poor wages. The government's responsible for poor productivity and loads of people stuck on waiting lists for years, sick and unable to work because they can't get an operation or they can't get the mental health services that they need. The government creates the decline and then points at the people affected by that decline and goes, oh look, there's your problem. It's their fault that work doesn't pay. And what happens if people have enough and they want to take a stand against the fact that their corporations are making record profits whilst they're being paid nothing? Well, if they want to take to the streets, there's the Public Order Act, which has stripped away their right to protest meaningfully. And then there's the Minimum Service Level Strike Act. Don't strike, it's illegal. Don't protest, it's illegal. Brick by brick, we are being punished and criminalised for resistance against conditions that have been inflicted on us by super rich entitled politicians who get away with their crimes, who sniff a line of coke before going into the House of Commons to debate about a war on drugs, who are making our resistance illegal. People read the headlines, take the bait, spread the hate, fall for the scam, but don't notice that they're being played by the Etonian, cosplaying as their mate from down the pub, until of course the time comes when they need to take a stand, until the moment they find themselves in hard times, their daughter unable to get a life-saving operation, or, you know, them waiting months to get their cancer results, or them losing their jobs because they're sick, and then they're forced to claim universal credit, only to find it doesn't cover the outgoings that you have. The housing benefit cap barely even covers your mortgage or your rent, so you have to dip in to that money that's allocated for food, and then you find yourself at a food bank, because if you don't eat from there you're not going to be able to heat your house. Then you'll realise why the people you were calling fucking lefties were fighting for your rights. Then you will realise this has fuck all to do with the immigrant they've taught you to hate, or your fellow poor person standing in line at the food bank. But the richest people in our society and other privileged people run posh mafia rings so they can profit above anything else and keep pushing that money into the Conservative Party, whilst you're monitored so that if a relative gives you a couple of £100 to replace your dishwasher, they can justify taking away the very little they're giving you in the first place. Every bill this government passes, every clause, every policy is designed to strip away your rights, not to fix any of the myriad problems that they have caused. It's just there to further a culture war, so it can be spun into a headline for the Daily Mail or any of the other myriad newspapers that are noshing off the government and spinning their lies. They had one job. They could have just governed properly, but no, they fucked it. And I'm not taking, and you should not be taking, them having the fucking audacity to punish and blame us for it. Sign up, register to vote, and use your vote to eradicate them.